My mother abandoned me at 7, but when she came back 10 years later, demanding 40% of my inheritance, I recorded every word and exposed her in front of everyone. I'm 19 years old, studying graphic design at university, and there's a story I need to tell because it basically defines who I am today and why I have such a hard time trusting people, especially family. The thing is, my mother abandoned me when I was 7 years old, and that alone is heavy. But what happened after, when she came back 10 years later, was even worse because it turned out she didn't come back for me. She came back for the money my dad left me before he died. I guess I should start from the beginning so all of this makes sense. My dad died when I was a baby. Like I was only a few months old, so I don't have any memories of him. What I do know is that he worked in something related to technology. I'm not exactly sure what he did, but apparently he did really well. And when he died, he left me a pretty substantial inheritance in a trust fund that I could claim when I turned 18. My mom was with me until I was like 6 or 7, and looking back now, I realized she was never really maternal, you know. Like, she did the basics, but there wasn't that warmth you see in other moms. I remember she spent a lot of time away from home, always had meetings or things to do, and I would stay with babysitters or sometimes with Uncle Frank, who was my dad's brother. One day, I think it was like March or April, when I was in 2nd grade, my mom took me to Uncle Frank's house and told me she had to go on a business trip, that she was going to be away for like a week or two. I remember perfectly that she was carrying a big suitcase and she gave me a kiss on the forehead, and I didn't think anything was weird because she had traveled for work before. Uncle Frank didn't seem very happy to have me there, but he didn't say anything either. A week passed, then 2, then a month, and my mom never came back. She didn't call, didn't write, literally disappeared from my life as if I had never existed. Uncle Frank at first tried to contact her, or so he told me, but after a while he simply stopped trying and I ended up living with him. And this is where things got really difficult. Because Uncle Frank clearly didn't want to be responsible for a 7-year-old girl. He never directly told me he hated me or anything like that, but you could feel it in everything he did. He gave me the bare minimum to survive, like I had a roof over my head and food on the table, but there was absolutely no warmth or affection. Over the years, it got worse. He started making passive-aggressive comments about how I was a burden, how I had ruined his life, how if it weren't for me, he could be doing other things. When I'd come home from school, he'd say things like, "I hope you at least get good grades since you're costing me so much money," or, "Your mother was smart enough to leave. I wish I could do the same." The truth is, those years between 7 and 14 were the loneliest of my life. I took refuge in school, in books, in anything that would get me out of that house, even if just for a few hours. My grades were excellent, not because I was naturally brilliant or anything, but because studying was literally my only form of escape. I spent hours in the library after classes, did all the extra projects I could, volunteered for any activity that meant not having to go back home to Uncle Frank. Weekends were the worst because there was no school and I had to be at home, listening to his hurtful comments, feeling that constant tension in the air. Everything changed when I was 14 and I met Jessica. We got paired together for a project in science class. And I don't know, we just clicked immediately. Jessica was one of those people who have super positive energy, always smiling, always seeing the good side of things. At first, we were just project partners, but we started spending more time together at school. Then she invited me to her house to work on the project, and that's where I met her family. And let me tell you, it was like entering a completely different world. Jessica's parents, especially her dad, Mr. Reynolds, who was a lawyer, were incredibly warm and welcoming. The first time I went to her house for the project, Jessica's mom made me feel like I was part of the family from minute one. She offered me snacks, asked me about school, about my interests, and she did it in a genuine way. You know, not like those forced questions adults ask because they feel obligated. Mr. Reynolds asked me what I wanted to study in the future, talked to me about different careers, made me feel like my opinions and my dreams really mattered. Jessica eventually found out about my situation with Uncle Frank, not because I told her directly, but because one time she picked me up at my house and heard Uncle Frank saying something super hurtful to me before I left. I didn't give her many details, but she was smart. She figured out things weren't okay. From that moment on, Jessica's family practically adopted me informally. I started spending more and more time at her house, had dinner with them like 3 or 4 times a week, spent weekends there. They even let me have a drawer in Jessica's room so I'd have extra clothes. They never made me feel like a burden or like I was invading their space. On the contrary, they always told me I was welcome whenever I wanted. For the first time since my mom abandoned me, I felt like I had a real family. Jessica's parents treated me like another daughter, included me in their family traditions, supported me in school, listened when I needed to talk. Mr. Reynolds even helped me with some legal issues related to my inheritance when I turned 16, explaining how the trust fund my dad had left worked, when I could access the money, things like that. He told me it was a considerable amount, that my dad had been very careful in structuring it to secure my future. Things continued like this until I turned 17, and then, out of nowhere, my mom reappeared. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was at Uncle Frank's house doing homework when the doorbell rang. I opened the door, and there she was, 10 years older, with a guy I didn't know standing next to her. I was literally paralyzed, couldn't even speak. She smiled, that smile that didn't reach her eyes, and said, "Hi, Katie. You've grown so much." Like nothing, like she hadn't abandoned me a decade ago, like it was normal to show up like that out of the blue. The guy with her introduced himself as Tyler, her husband. Tyler was like 40 years old, wore expensive clothes, had that used car salesman vibe, you know, too friendly, too smiley, too everything. My mom came in without me inviting her, started talking super fast, saying she'd been thinking about me all these years, that she had to leave for complicated reasons I wouldn't understand, that now she was in a better place in her life and wanted to reconnect with me. Tyler nodded at everything she said, adding comments like, "Your mom has talked so much about you. We're so excited to finally meet you." I'm not gonna lie. Part of me, that small hurt part that was still a 7-year-old abandoned girl, wanted to believe them. I wanted to believe my mom had really regretted it, that she really wanted to be in my life. But another part of me, the part that had grown up with Uncle Frank, the part that had learned not to trust anyone, knew something wasn't right. It was too convenient, too sudden, too perfect. They started visiting me often after that first time. They'd come like 2 or 3 times a week, always bringing gifts, always super attentive, always asking about my life. My mom wanted to know about school, about my plans for college, about my friends. Tyler always asked about my future, about what I wanted to study, about how I planned to pay for college. At the time, I didn't see it as suspicious. I thought he was just being considerate. But looking back, the signs were there from the beginning. I told Jessica and her family about the visits, and Mr. Reynolds immediately went into protective mode, he told me to be careful, that it was very strange that my mom would appear just when I was close to turning 18 and being able to access my inheritance. I told him he was being paranoid, that maybe my mom really wanted to fix things, but he made me promise I'd let him know if anything seemed weird. Something weird happened like 2 months after the visit started. I was in my room at Uncle Frank's house. It was like 9 at night, and I heard my mom and Tyler downstairs talking with Uncle Frank. Normally, Uncle Frank ignored them or gave them short answers when they came, but that night the 3 of them were having a real conversation. I moved closer to the stairs to hear better. Not with the intention of eavesdropping, but I also didn't feel bad about it considering the circumstances. What I heard froze my blood. Tyler was saying something about the trust fund, about how much money there was exactly, about when I could access it. My mom said something like, "We just have to wait until she turns 18 and then we can convince her to help us. She's our daughter after all. She has to understand we're family." And Tyler responded, "If we play our cards right, we could get at least half, maybe more if we make her believe we really care." I sat there on the stairs, feeling like someone had thrown a bucket of cold water on me. They weren't there for me. They had never been there for me. They were there for the money, for the inheritance my dad had left me. And Uncle Frank, that bastard, was basically helping them, probably because he wanted some of that money too. I went to my room as quietly as possible, got into bed, and cried for hours. I didn't cry because I was surprised. Deep down, I think I always knew something was wrong. I cried because it hurts to have it confirmed that your own mother only sees you as a source of income. The next day, I went straight to Jessica's house and told Mr. Reynolds everything. He got furious. Not with me, obviously, but with my mom and Tyler. He told me we needed evidence, that a conversation I overheard wasn't enough legally. He suggested I start recording conversations with them, that I let them keep coming, that I act normal, but that I document everything. I felt super uncomfortable with the idea of recording my own mother, but at the same time, I knew it was necessary. Over the next few weeks, every time my mom and Tyler came, I had my phone recording discreetly. At first, they continued with the loving parents act, but little by little, they started showing their true face. Tyler started making comments about how families should help each other financially, how I was lucky to have that inheritance but should think about sharing it with those who had taken care of me all these years. My mom started talking about all the difficulties she'd been through, about how she could use a little financial help, about how it would be nice if I showed my gratitude for her giving me life. The situation reached its peak like 2 weeks before my 18th birthday. Tyler came alone that time. My mom supposedly had a doctor's appointment or something. He sat with me in the living room at Uncle Frank's house and went straight to the point. He told me that he and my mom were going through a difficult time financially, that they had invested in a business that hadn't worked out, that they had debts. Then he asked me if I would consider, when I turned 18 and accessed the trust fund, giving them like 40% of the money. He said it was fair, that my mom had raised me for 7 years and that deserved compensation, that Tyler had been there supporting her and also deserved something. I sat there looking at him, unable to believe how shameless he was being. I told him I needed time to think about it, that it was a big decision, and he pressured me, saying there wasn't much to think about, that family helps each other. That whole conversation was recorded on my phone. That night I went to Mr. Reynolds and showed him all the recordings I had collected. He listened to all of them, taking notes. And when he finished, he looked at me and said, "Katie, this is emotional abuse and financial manipulation. We need to end this now." He asked me if I was ready to confront them, to cut all ties with them, and even though I was scared, I told him yes. Part of me still hoped my mom would somehow surprise me, that I'd find some humanity in her, but Mr. Reynolds reminded me what they had said in the recordings. There was no doubt about their intentions. We organized a meeting at a neutral restaurant. I told my mom and Tyler I wanted to talk about my birthday and about the future. They arrived super excited, probably thinking I was going to tell them I'd give them the money. Mr. Reynolds was also there, sitting at another table but within view. My mom and Tyler sat across from me. Tyler started with his usual speech about family and mutual support, and I let him talk for a few minutes. Then I took out my phone, played one of the recordings where Tyler clearly said they were only there for the money, and let it play. Their faces. Literally. It was like watching someone realize they just lost the game. Tyler tried to say I had misunderstood, that I was taking things out of context, but I had like 6 different recordings, all saying basically the same thing. My mom started crying, like ugly crying with sobs and everything, saying yes, they needed the money, but that didn't mean they didn't love me, that it could be both things. I told her, "Mom, or whatever I should call you, you abandoned me when I was 7 years old. You had no contact with me for 10 years, and you only came back when you knew I was about to inherit money. That's not love. That's pure greed." Tyler tried to interrupt, but I raised my hand and told him to shut up. I told my mom that if she really had wanted to be in my life, if she really cared, she would have come back at any time during those 10 years. She would have been there when Uncle Frank treated me like trash. She would have been there when I felt completely alone. She would have been there on my birthdays, at graduations, at any moment. But she didn't, because I never mattered to her. And now coming to pretend we're family just because she wants money wasn't going to work. Tyler finally admitted that yes, they needed the money desperately, that they had assumed I would be willing to help. My mom kept crying, saying she was sorry, that she had made mistakes, but I was already tired of listening to her. Mr. Reynolds came to our table at that moment and formally introduced himself as my lawyer. He told my mom and Tyler that any attempt to contact me again, any attempt to manipulate or harass me, would result in legal action. I told them to leave, that I never wanted to see them again, that they were officially out of my life. My mom tried to grab my hand, but I pulled it away. They got up and left, and that was the last time I saw them. They haven't tried to contact me since. I guess Mr. Reynolds scared them enough, or they simply realized they weren't going to get anything from me. I turned 18 like a year and a half ago, accessed the trust fund with Mr. Reynolds' help, and the truth is my dad left me well taken care of. It's enough to pay for my entire college and have a safety cushion for when I graduate. I officially moved in with Jessica's family after turning 18. Uncle Frank didn't even try to stop me. I think he was relieved to finally get rid of me. The truth is, I still struggle to process everything that happened. Sometimes I think about my mom and wonder if any part of her really wanted to reconnect with me, or if it was all acting from the beginning. I'll probably never know, and I guess that's okay. I don't need those answers to move forward. What I do know is that family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people you choose. The people who choose you when no one else does. Jessica and her family saved me in many ways. They gave me something my own mother could never give me. They gave me a real home.